Sitting with my boy Bradley Paul, who is a director based out of New York. He has experience working in commercial space, the music space, and you also have gotten into quite a bit of doc style.
A lot of little docs, like short form docs.
A little doc style, yeah. And the reason why we're doing this podcast is I feel like what gets me so excited to talk to you with Ed is just your experience working with large crews. I mean, you're a director. At any given time, you're working with 5, 10, 15 people sometimes on these productions. And a lot of my audience, a lot of Ed's audience, we're freelancers. So we typically show up to a shoot. It's us, maybe an assistant. We kind of want to just talk about what does that look like and how did you go from, being someone from Texas that really wanted to get in the industry to now being on these sets where you've worked with people like Action Bronson.
Yeah, and I think another thing we'd love to ask you on this podcast is also, people don't know, but Bradley is like a beast. Like, he knows how to network. Yep. He's good at building community. He's good at like building strong connections, which I think that would be valuable to cover on this podcast as well, because creators struggle with finding like-minded individuals or people to help in their community or just connecting with people, over even Instagram DMs and like the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so I want to know, has there been like one thing where you're like, this has definitely contributed to, cultivating this healthy, good community in New York. We're able to pull these contractors in per project. Like, explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge process. Just connecting in New York in the industry can be really difficult. But I feel like once those connections are made and I'm hiring these project-based people, key that I've learned and just in my experience and like moving up is that I like to empower these individuals, even though they're day players, so to speak, or like project based and they're just on for the one project and they go. I make sure that they feel like they have a little bit of skin in the game. And when I say that, it's like sometimes the little things. It's basically like, even just having a quick conversation with a gaffer or with a PA. And just telling them how grateful I am that they're hopping on the project with me. And, it's those little things and keeping that communication that really like start to develop those relationships. And I say relationships because it doesn't matter if they're a PA, if they're, gaffing, if they're, my DP, like I treat them all the same and they all like have the same level of respect from me. And that goes twofold for me. Like, it's beneficial for me because I'm able to not only have these relationships where people feel empowered in the creative, and it becomes even a collaborative experience because I can only do my single role and stay in my lane.
Yep.
And there's reasons why everyone has their roles. And so I want everybody to be able to put their best foot forward and not think that, oh, I'm just going to be here for 8-10 hours and then I'm gone and I collect a paycheck. I want them to understand like we're collaborating and we're building this piece of art.
You want them to feel valued.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's rare in this industry where, I mean, I've been on big sets before. I've been on sets with you, and you take the time to shake hands with everybody. I mean, even like the catering guy maybe. But
especially the catering guy.
You set the tone as the director. Yeah. So every single person that's on set, from talent to hair and makeup to the grip, I mean, they're looking at you as a leader. So I think that's what's so cool about having you on this podcast and just like being friends with you is it's rare to have that in a director, but also that goes to show your character and also your, there's a reason why you've been able to work with these artists and on these commercials.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have been on sets too, where, you're a gaffer, a PA, and everybody's talking like whatever about the director, because it's like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and so, you know what I mean? And
hey, tell me why it's the guys from LA.
Yeah.
There's LA bros, man. There's LA bros.
Oh man. And I just want to say, Ed's like, yo, from the beginning, you're like, yeah, Bradley's the master connector, networker. We were just in Miami for Art Basel, and we were at the Soho House for an event, and Leon Bridges walks by and goes, Bradley, I like that jacket, man. And it just goes, it goes to show, like, first of all, this guy doesn't only, treat people on set with respect, but also everywhere you go, you're making friends, you're making connections that ultimately are going to help you on any commercial or any gig that you score, which has definitely rubbed off on me and like the way that I'm approaching productions now. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like there's various ways to connect with, there's direct connections, there's through friends, there's social media. I think a lot of the key to like making those connections and building those relationships is the approach. Approach with humbleness. Really, it's like, hey, I really appreciate what you do. I like these elements of like your process and your art. Maybe you can share a little bit with me on what that looks like. And I think that goes a long way, because that person that you're then trying to connect with and maybe eventually create with and maybe collaborate with, you start to develop like conversation, and that conversation then leads to a relationship. But I think a lot of people show up and they're just like, like they have an intentionality, and not all intentionalities align, So I think coming at it with an understanding of like, hey, maybe something will come of this, maybe it won't. Yeah. But I think this person is valuable, and like I would like to have a conversation, and just come with that like humbleness. I think is a big like way of approaching. People.
Something that I'm really curious about personally is that we've been talking in the context of you as a director, but with like when you started your career, when did you start as like a PA? Like tell us a little about how you went about like getting to where you are, because I feel like people listening to this maybe be like, I'm not at that level.
It can seem scary,
but
like, this guy's a director from New York, he looks good.
It's subjective, but
but if you want it, how did you like, tell us a little about your story, like how you went from working on set to maybe doing assistant directing, then to directing. Like what did that process look like? And I guess you can kind of tap into like the networking aspect of that, but kind of what your journey looked like.
I mean, honestly, yes, I started as a PA. When I first came to New York, it was absolutely about networking. And the wild thing is, I was at this Johnny Swim concert. I don't know if you're...
Quick little plug.
Yeah. At this small little venue called the Rockwood Theater in New York. And I didn't know a soul. I knew maybe like one or two people in the city, and they weren't even in my industry. And so I went to the show by myself just to enjoy it. And I just started chatting it up with this guy, not knowing who he was, what he was about. He's just, chilling with like one other person. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have a conversation. Turns out he worked at Nickelodeon as a line producer. Hey. And, he asked me what industry I was in. I was like, honestly, like I just moved here, but I'm in, the film industry. This is what I enjoy. I had not a lot of knowledge at that time either. And he was like, yeah. And so after like conversations, a couple glasses of wine, he was like, you know what, why don't you come in on Monday and we'll chat about potential opportunities. I'm like, sounds great. Dang. Come in on Monday, and by Tuesday, I have a job as a PA at Nickelodeon. And that was kind of where my trajectory then started in New York in the industry.
Did your boy get slimed?
And I got slimed. Hey. day number 4, actually.
Break it down real quick. 3 things that happened at Nickelodeon, when you were there. Because, I mean, you've shared it with me, and it's just cool to see, what you were doing at that Johnny Swim concert, where you were just being relational, and also you were just being like yourself. And it turned into something because that guy saw potential in you. And he's like, I want this guy to be on my team. Yeah. It's like, what are a few things at Nickelodeon that happened? Because I feel like that kind of trickles into where you are now,
Yeah. I mean, at Nickelodeon too, then, as a PA, and this is from on the corporate side of things, it can really feel daunting, because a PA is literally, especially at a huge network like Nickelodeon, you've got executives making millions of dollars, and you're over here like scraping by in New York City. And, so it's really about continually making those connections, but coming about it with this sense of gratitude. So every day I kept reminding myself how grateful I was to like have a job, even as a PA. And I brought that to the people that I worked with.
That's cool.
And then I started building community around that. So even the other PAs, I was like, you know what, we're in this together. Let's bond together. It wasn't like hey, I'm trying to one up you so that I can now be a production coordinator. Totally. It's like, let's do this together. And if we build together, we can do.
That's cool.
And so literally 3 of us guys like worked our way up all the way to where before I left, I was producer and writer of I was producer and writer at Nickelodeon.
Cool.
And so from there, then I branched out and started my own business. But But yeah, there was a trajectory of
That's
networking
awesome.
and building community, which is super key.
That's so cool. Yeah, I just want to say, like, me and Bradley, we met a year ago in San Miguel, which we're at right now with a bunch of friends. And when I was in New York last, we're walking on the street and this lady says, Bradley. And I'm like, who is this girl? And she worked at Nickelodeon.
Oh, right.
And it
Yeah,
was
I
super
forgot
cool because the way that I watched you communicate with her, where you communicate with her just as if she was like a friend,
Mhm.
and you told me that she was pretty high up at Nickelodeon.
She was one of the top executives at Nickelodeon.
Wow.
And I think that's a good point. That's key. Treat everyone, like, regardless of their title, as they're your peer.
Mhm.
So I would walk into like my, my creative director's office, and I would be a PA, and I would talk to him to fully understand what he's looking for and where his mindset was and where his goals were. And then even as a PA, I would never just stay as a PA in terms of like workload. I would see the production coordinators, I'd see the producers, I'd see, the creatives, and I would observe what they were doing, and I would work at that level.
Wow.
And I would just pick up some of those things. If I saw a hole and I'm like, oh, these guys are like crushing it and they're working really hard, but like this needs to be done, I would then go do that. And it, even if I was like learning at that point, because when you're a PA, it's like you can take those high risks because no one expects anything from you.
Bro,
so if you're
that's
going
fire.
in and I was like, dude, let me edit this. And they were like, okay, like whatever, give it a shot. And I'm like, all right. And then I crushed it and they're like, oh, wow. All right, let's give them more of that. And it was just little things like that. I would put myself out there. I once purchased my own flight to go work on a project in LA just because I wanted to work with this specific team. And I purchased it myself and worked, just under my regular rate because I was like, you know what, like this is going to help put me in that place because I want to be with that team.
Wow.
So
I love that because it's over delivering, it's adding value, and it's also just being a doer. That is so huge in the industry, especially when people think of New York, they think of, oh, it's overly saturated with filmmakers, photographers, directors. But the way that you can stand out is by simply looking different.
Yes.
And just being personable and relatable and being a doer, getting after it. Not every project at the beginning is going to be big budget.
And I'm going to give just a little key here.
Little gold nugget?
Just a little nugget.
Yeah, we love gold nuggets.
If you want to excel and elevate what you're doing, make everyone around you feel like they are worth $1 billion.
Wow.
If you can make the people
That's
that you're
huge.
working with feel like they are the most important people in the room, they then value you because you're making them feel good. They enjoy being around you. So if you make your executives and your creatives and director, whoever you're working with, feel like they are worth $1 billion, they will value you. Even if it's the little things like maybe coffee runs.
We might have to throw some air horns in this podcast.
I wish I had a soundboard where I could just be like,
we're
some sound effect.
working on that?
Yeah. We got to get some of those sound mix boards where it's like, boop, 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 boop.
Oh, that's so good. No, I think that's good because it really brings it down to like a personal level. And also, I mean, that's a huge takeaway because it's so easy to get in that like creative mindset where you just like only focus on yourself. Where if you look at others as, valuable and you're not on a pedestal, then those relationships are going to go so much further.
Yeah. I love how you said earlier too, going off Paul's comment, like you said, treat everyone like your peers. It doesn't matter like at what level they're at. They could be a PA, they could be the director on set. But if you treat everyone like your peer, then they'll view you like eye to eye. And I feel like in the creator industry, that's really hard to find because most people, as soon as they meet someone, they'll immediately put them in a basket, right? Like they'll go to their Instagram, they see they have 100,000 followers. They're like, oh, boom, already put them on a pedestal. But you're shooting yourself in the foot to future opportunity because if you act that way, now that person also will put you in a box. Like, oh, this person's just like fanboying or this person is like, doesn't have anything to offer or whatever. Obviously, like that's not how everyone would look at it. But I do feel like your first impression is everything. Like the way you like approach someone for the first time,
It's huge.
they will like, we're not big on, like judging people, but they will label you, especially in the creative industries. Like your first impression is everything.
Yeah.
Would you say like your first impression has had a huge role in like people that you've met along your journey? Like how important is like that first interaction that you have with someone.
Yeah, it's super important. And for me, it doesn't matter if you're Miley Cyrus or if you're, bringing me coffee on set.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking to you the same way.
Wow.
And I think that first approach is key, in a way of that, like, you want to not only bring confidence to that conversation, but then you want to like empower that person that you're talking to. And I think that those two elements, like, there's a little mixture there, but those two elements like kind of help with that first approach.
Can you tell us a story or a time where like you totally just messed up, like you wanted to connect with someone, but like you did something and it just failed?
Man, I do think the first time I was a little nervous. So I came in at Nickelodeon, I was a PA. And the first time I was walking into the creative director's office, and I just like sat there and kind of froze actually. And I was like, okay, this isn't my vibe, but whatever. I don't know what just happened. And so he's asking me questions, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm super
Kinda
excited, yeah, like super timid. I walked out of the room, and I was like, I bombed, I super bombed. And I was like, this is going to be a tough road. But even if you feel like you bomb, if there is another opportunity, that you can come out of that. Your personality starts to show. I think one ticket to like remember too is always keep in mind, like, everyone you're talking to, they're all humans. It doesn't matter if you're a megastar celebrity or like a PA bringing coffee. Like we all have, like, in a way, like, similar brains. We all have, if we're on one project, we have a similar goal in mind of bringing our best to this project. So like coming at it in that sense, like if I'm a PA and I'm looking at a director, that person, generally speaking, isn't that much more smarter than me.
Totally.
They're still a human at a human level. So it's like there's not a huge gap there. So treat them as a peer, treat them with respect, and find ways to add value to your oversight. And they're gonna value you and respect you back, and it's a growth process from there. And don't come in with like very intentional goals right away of being like 1 year I'm gonna take his job kind of vibe.
Oh yeah, that's good.
That's a
good.
big way to like crash and burn hard.
Yeah.
Because anytime there's a disconnect like that, that person will most likely feel that in some way, especially if you're working 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day with each other. So
if you think you're the greatest thing, humble yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's key. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not like even the biggest director on the planet, but like I feel one day. No.
Not us talking about humility.
Yeah.
Hey, how about this?
Off the cuff of humility.
I think you're the best director to come out of your high school in Texas.
Hey, I did get best smile. So.
Hey.
That's great. Well, dude, I'm so pumped that you're here, and like these golden nuggets are money. Because there's freelancers listening to this that might just be growing their business. There might be like wedding photographers listening to this podcast, but the thing is like everything you're saying relates to every single one of us. Because if you're a wedding photographer and you're trying to like grow in the industry, I mean, one of our friends, he's one of the best wedding photographers in the US. He talks about how valuable it is and important it is to connect with the wedding planners. And treating them with respect. And if you're a freelancer, treat your clients with respect. And also treat the talents with respect so you can call them back on other projects. So it's like there's this one common theme that I'm hearing from you that I think all of us can take away, and it's treating everyone like they're your peers.
It brings value too for the future. So like even if that person is a day player or like project based, when you add that value, they end up like wanting to come back and work with you. So if you have other projects and you give them a call, I'm like, dude, I loved working with this gaffer. They're more than happy to come on. And then it goes twofold. Like there's some budgets that vary, in terms of like how big, in scale. So it's like there might be another, budgeted project where I'm like, I don't have your full industry standard rate, but you know what? I'm gonna make that phone call. And because we've created this relationship, more often than not, they're willing to work at a lower budget price if they have the availability.
That's awesome.
And so it works in so much, greater sense than just like that one project.
Yeah. Can we talk about that a little bit about providing value? Like, let's break that down a little bit. Like, let's say you're a creator trying to connect with someone, whether that's on set or you're a day player, or you want to connect with someone you've never met before. What are some of your tips on providing value, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to, we talked about this off the mic a little bit, but when you want to connect with people, one of the worst things you can do is just slide in their DMs and be like, hey, can I pick your brain over coffee?
Yeah. Pick your brain to me
feeling
feels
personally
like
attacked right now.
they just want to scoop out a piece and then run with it.
Yeah.
And that to me like feels like
yeah.
I know it's like a common like phrase or whatever, but that's how I feel when I get approached like that. And more often than not, I'm just like, I just won't respond or whatever. I do think that approach, especially on social media, if you don't have that personable connection initially, like that approach on social needs to be very catered to that person and what you see value in that person. And then also, just very personable, like don't make it like a copy paste sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to send this to like 50 of my favorite creators and see who ends up wanting to get coffee. Cause more often than not, people can see that. And they're like, this feels very copy paste.
I want to say real quick on the whole pick your brain thing, because come on, like we've all been in a position where we've asked people when we first started, hey, can I pick your brain over coffee? And now that we're in the spot where, people might be reaching out to us saying, hey, can I pick your brain? I think the best way to approach it is figure out ways you can add value to that person that you want to pick their brain and approach them with that before anything else. Like what is something that you can bring to the table to add value to them? So maybe if I want to be on set with Bradley, I'm trying to figure out a way that I can maybe show up and be like a grip and just like volunteer my time for free just to show you the value that I have to offer.
Yeah.
Like how valuable is that? Like let's say you're someone trying to get on set with you, Bradley. Like what would be like a DM that you're like, oh, that like intrigues me a bit. Like I might want to work with this individual. Like what does that DM look like? What are they saying?
Well, I think because the industry is like, it's massive, but it's also really small. There's a lot of times like people will know other people. And so I think when someone approaches me and like, say I know that they're a producer, right? Like it's a producer, but he wants to work with me. I would say like I've approached in a way where if I wanted to work with somebody, I'm like, look, listen, I love your work. I love the creative that you're putting out. And I would be happy to come on as a PA and bring your coffee or just like, just like hang out and like, like take photos or whatever.
Yep.
Like, I think just being on set and then like being able to then find those places where you can add value.
Fill some holes. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of my good friends now, Solomon Lichthelm, he's a pretty well-known commercial director. And I've saw his work for years before we created a friendship. And I was like, man, I just want to emulate that. He's brilliant, and I was like, how do I get to work with this guy? Because like we do the same thing, but obviously I'm not doing it at that level and I want to work with him. So we just started chatting and I told him, I was like, look, I'll just come on and I'll PA, if there's availability, like I just want to be a part of what you're doing. And I love what you're doing. And so I think that humble nature of like, even though he knows I'm a director and I produce, I can show like, hey, I'm willing to PA with you and that's showing value to that person. That's telling them like, this guy really thinks that there's something there.
And I've been to your office before. You guys work out of the same room now.
Yeah. So we're
full circle.
We're literally collaborate on.
You're working on projects. He's working on projects, and you guys are like collaborating.
Yeah, we just got back from Ukraine last month shooting a short film.
My man's international.
Yeah. And what's cool is you're rubbing shoulders with people that, again, you're learning from, and also you're able to be a resource to. Yet you still are a director that has work coming in. You're busy, which shows how humble you are. So I think there's so many takeaways in that.
Yeah, let's want to do like a speed recap. Like, what are some of the key takeaways we've talked over about this podcast? I feel like one of the biggest ones that I took away personally was whoever you meet along your journey, view them as peers. Yeah, like don't put people on a pedestal. Don't like undermine people. Yeah. Treat everyone like $1 billion. Make sure that you keep the fire like burning, even in your team. That's good. And that will help you like in your journey.
Yep.
I like what you touched on with making sure that every single person has skin in the game. Like, dude, we've both been on set before where there's someone who's just, you can tell isn't really a part of the conversation. They're kind of like chilling on the couch, and you bring them in and you're like, do you know what? You are so good at hair and makeup.
Yeah.
Or like, thank you so much for bringing lunch. It was incredible.
Yep.
So like making them feel like they have skin in the game, I think was such a valuable point.
Yeah. And I think to that, I think one of the bigger things that I like to do is like, say gaffer, for instance, or grip, you know, like if they're working on the lighting or they're running, you know, cables with electric, instead of just telling them, hey, do this, do this, do this,
Yep.
Which I'm totally capable of doing, I'll give them the overall vision, and then I'll stand with them for a second. I'll be like, but what do you think?
Cool.
If we utilize that light in that way, how would you utilize it? Or is there a different way? That's
good.
And so now they feel like they have creative input. And I think even giving anyone from like the lowest level to the top level a piece of that, feeling like they have some sort of creative input, that's where the skin in the game comes in. Now they're like, wow, okay, cool. This guy actually values what I have to say instead of just telling me what to do. And that's when people really want to start coming back. And that's where relationships are then created.
So. This is gold, man. I'm like, I'm loving this because we're in the beginning of the new year, and all of us, whether you're a freelancer, you're a director, whatever role you are, you could be a hair and makeup artist, and you could be listening to this and you could be like, wow, this is the approach that I want to take in order to grow my network, in order to, build something that is going to be appreciated by everybody that's part of the team. So I think that's what's so valuable about your perspective, because I look at some of your productions and I'm like, there are so many people on set. How the heck do you manage that? And it takes a special, it takes character, and it takes the leadership skills that you have that I think, I'm taking a lot from this. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for having me on.
Sweet.
Where can we find Bradley Paul?
Yeah. Where can we find you? If people want to like learn more about you,
pick your brain a little bit.
Hey, they want to pick your brain over coffee.
DM me, pick your brain. At Bradley Paul.
Yeah, like subject line, email, where can they find you? You're rocking Instagram or MySpace?
Yeah, on Instagram, myspace.com/Bradley Paul.
Bro, you have the best like custom cursor on MySpace. Is it Bradley Paul on Instagram?
Bradley Paul on Instagram. There's bradleypaulcreative.com. You can email me at bradley@bradleypaulcreative.com.
You've been crushing Instagram lately, so.
Yeah, I actually hired a guy to do it, so I don't know if I can take the credit for that. But
so that's another podcast, how to outsource.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that could be a whole other episode.
Just to tease that whole episode, that has literally brought my stress level down so much. That's all I'll say.
I can see that. That would be a really valuable episode for a lot of people.
Which has allowed my creative abilities to go further.
Sick.
So maybe if you found value from this podcast, what should people do?
They should go to Apple Podcast, leave a 5-star review. We're trying to get mid-combo on the up.
Yep.
Hey.
No, but thanks, Bradley, for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was a good combo.
Thank you, guys.
Peace.
See ya.
Bye.